Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar, and once again, this is my opinion. Now we come to another one of the good episodes, or should I say, great episodes of Season 3, and that is Episode 16, Frank's Tribute. It was written by Eric Cohen, which this is his only Everybody Loves Raymond writing credit, which is an oddity, because a lot of times when I mention the name of the writer, it's usually one that pops up later. Maybe it'll be a co-writer. But then occasionally you get one like this where it's their one-off. I don't know why. Maybe you just didn't click with the rest of the writers. Or it might be this other little thing I'm about to mention in a few. But for whatever, he came, he saw, he left. And he left us with this great episode. The plot of the episode is that at his lodge, which has been mentioned many times, but this will be the first time we actually get to see it properly in an episode, Frank has been voted Man of the Year at his lodge. As such, the family has to organize it. They have to make a tribute. Usually they have the wife do it, but Marie decides to delegate that to Ray and Robert. Robert's excited about it, but Ray's like, oh, great, really? We got to do this? Well, they decide they're going to do a video tribute for it, and they decide to go down to the lodge and speak with the people there. And this is the first time we see that they actually swim naked at the lodge, which that scene, the way it's framed, you don't see anything, obviously, it's network TV, but enough is left to the imagination that you know that these men are walking around naked. It's partially the framing of the camera, but it's also the way Ray and Robert are reacting. And of course, because of this, Robert gets a great one-liner. What's the matter, Ray? Can't you see that the guy's getting cold? Even now, that got me bursting out laughing. Which I had to be careful. I had the bird with me on my shoulder while I was in it. I didn't want to be like... and then... Oh, sorry. That would have been the way of things. Well, it turns out nobody at the lodge really likes Frank to the point that they're going to say nice things about him. Which, even as a kid, I was scratching my head going, why was he voted? But as an adult, I'm like, really? Why was he voted? It's something that I wonder about even more. I mean, one of the guys even goes, we're down to him. So I'm guessing it's probably the people running the lodge that put people on the ballot, and then people just be like, it's between blah, blah, blah and Frank. Let's go with Frank. That's how it went. I kind of feel a little sorry for Frank, because then that means he wasn't generally voted because people liked him. Even his buddies Garvin and Stan don't really have a lot to say about him because of him ducking them when it comes to paying money and crashing into a car. Well, we do get to see the video tribute that the boys eventually do put together, having to ask a fake question. It's hilarious, because the fake question they asked is, how do you feel about chocolate? And of course, the entire lodge is like, chocolate? Did you say chocolate? Chocolate. Yeah, chocolate. And they give answers you would expect, so they have to fix it in post. And Frank's not happy. He even storms out of the lodge. That's how unhappy he is. He's like, that was a crap tribute. He tells, hey, you guys enjoy your steak, I'm out. And we find out when he has a little moment with Marie that another person who got a tribute, it was like a 30-minute long tribute with people talking about how much they loved him, and then they did a whole musical thing, which had been brought up a couple times beforehand, putting on some falsies. And Frank is annoyed by this, which rightfully Marie calls him out on. So some good acting here, this whole last part of the episode between Frank and Marie. Great acting by Peter Boyle and Doris Roberts. Marie calls Frank out on it by saying, don't you think if your buddies had something nice to say, it would have been in there? That's really what's bugging you, isn't it? Frank doesn't say anything, so yes, that's obviously what it is. He just hates the fact that he's around these people all the time, talks to them, and makes it seem like they're buddy-buddy, but then when it comes down to it and they have to do something for a tribute, they turn their back on him. Even his so-called friends don't say anything nice about him. I'm going to have a feeling that they cut that part out of the tribute, but since the fact that Garvin and Stan are not in there and they're lodge members, that's something you can kind of put two and two together, which is sad. Frank does have a little heart-to-heart with Marie, asking what she'd say. She tells him he can't really say the same to her, which is another thing she calls him out on. And the line she tells him, I actually wrote down, and it's a pretty good line. You have to give love, Frank, to get it, and you have never been willing to do that. You don't have to try anymore. Which is a good point. In order to get love, you have to give it. Now, his friends, they kind of, I won't say love him, but they tolerate him. Maybe they love him in, a platonic way that, as a certain Marvel character said, it's unsaid. But he really doesn't give it a lot in return. To his family members, or at least the close, children, wife, and all that, he does show it, but he's selective in showing it, which I can understand. The grandfather that raised me was the same way. I mean, he would show it selectively, gifts and all that. One time my TV cacked out on me. He just was like sitting there and like, Then he got up when he got a new one, came back with it. Stuff like that. I could possibly see Frank doing that, but not in the same way. It'd be a different. He'd have to wait. He'd wait and do it. He's selective in it, but he doesn't do it as much as Marie implies here, which is true. Selective. And whenever Marie wants to talk about stuff, he does what we see him do here. He just ignores it and waits for the other person to go away or just walks out. Well, with everything going on and with what she says, and it's mainly the fact he can't really say anything nice to her in return, like if he was doing a tribute, we do get a nice little warm scene from Frank here. And that is, he walks out, gets a towel, he wipes off the cream that Marie had put on her face, which you're going to see again in a later episode. Or we actually saw in a previous episode. Excuse me, I got my seasons mixed up. He wipes it off, and I have the line where he says to her written down, "I like you better without the crap on your face." Now, in certain contexts, that might not sound like much, but given the context of the end part of this episode, it's the closest that Frank is going to get to saying something warm, deep, and thoughtful, and a compliment for her. Because he's essentially telling Marie that I love you just the way you are. And that is essentially how Marie takes it. And she, is like, "Oh, Frank." And we get another little funny little one-liner from Frank in the little conversation they have following, which I believe the episode that kind of ties in with it comes in next season. It's this one he says about being man once a year. It's a sex joke. Of course, it's going to tie in with the episode where Marie says they only have sex once a year, which I'm going to leave all my thoughts for that one for once we get to that one. Because that one, that episode's going to be funny. But you kind of find it interesting, given one thing Marie says in that one, when they kind of did touch on that part of their life in another episode, but that was previous and that is current. Now, the fun thing about the fact that this episode's second half is more drama and less comedy, that was actually a criticism when this episode first came out. Virginia Rowan of The Record gave it a mixed review, and she criticized the tone shift there and said that it was well acted but wrenchingly unfunny. Which I don't know if she meant to direct that at the whole episode. If so, it makes you wonder what she specifically finds funny, if she's saying that the comedic parts of this episode are unfunny. But if it's labeled at the second half, all I have to say is, and the second half of this episode is not written to be type funny. It's meant to be, we're having a serious moment with these characters. As a certain wrestler would say, if I can get serious for a moment, and that's what they do. There are a couple of lighthearted moments there that you could chuckle at and then, clap at, but that's what it's supposed to be. It'd be like criticizing a certain Archie Bunker moment from the All in the Family spinoff because it's more about the drama and less about the comedy. Are you really going to sit there and criticize the episode where Archie has his breakdown and his little speech about his late wife when he finds a slipper just because it's not funny? No, you wouldn't, because of the seriousness here. This is a couple steps away from that, but it's still touching, but it's in a different manner. So to criticize it for being unfunny, it's like, yeah. Now I can get, if you don't like the fact that it shifts from typical sitcom into a more serious matter there, tying in with the plot and the main thing about Frank being man of the year and how he feels about everything. But it feels natural. And it is nice to see it between Frank and Marie, that little thing there, because most of the time when we see moments between them, it's either been adding to the lore of the show, been tying in with everyone else and they've been supporting characters, or been played fully for laughs. So it's nice to actually see something that's more drama there. And of course, it does end with a funny little line at the end that Maurice says about Ray living across the street. And of course, in later years, Miss Virginia has been shown to have her criticisms be thrown back at her, because in retrospect, this episode has been well regarded, and it is currently the highest rated episode on IMDb that revolves around Frank, at 7.8. And also adding to that, from the acting standpoint, Doris Roberts, this was one of the episodes she received her 1999 Supporting Actress Emmy nomination for. The other, of course, being The Toaster. Which I can see why, because that one, it's a little bit more about her straight comedic talents as Marie, whereas this one, it's a dramatic side of it. So, two halves of a coin. She well deserved the nomination. And, of course, this season where they started getting the nominations, well deserved in my opinion. And I actually found out doing some of the research here that a lot of critics actually thought that the first two seasons got snubbed, which I will agree with. But you know, that's the political nature of some of these awards. Now, this is the only episode he directly appears in, but this is our first mention of the character Bullethead. He gets a few mentions in later seasons, but actually having him appear for the first time is nice. Would have been nice to have an episode where we actually see a direct confrontation between him and Frank, like, "Hey, Barone, Bullethead!" And he's played here by John Conte, but how he plays him and how they talk about him in later episodes, you can kind of see that his reputation amongst the Lodge folks is warranted. All in all, this is a pretty fun episode. Nice comedic first half, then it segues nicely into the dramatic second half, ends on a lighthearted with some comedy thrown in. Now, if the tone shift is not for you, I could see you not liking the second half as much, or having to view it as its own separate half episode. But for me, I enjoyed that part about it. And that's why this is definitely one of my favorite episodes of Season 3. And another episode I recommend you watching. Like, if you're going to only watch the best episodes of each season, this will definitely be on that list for Season 3.